Hi, welcome back. We're doing more 2-point today. This time we're going to check out, I think Mitten University makes more sense than the alternative over here, which is Tumble. I think the university makes more sense because we've just set up a training facility on over whatever it was, Flottering. So now would be a good idea to continue along that pathway and to educate some new bright young minds. So we'll see what happens. Vice Chancellor has been impressed with our progress, and we've been invited to establish Mitten University Research and Teaching Hospital. It's a great opportunity for us. We can set up a research department and develop some new tech. Ooh. We'll only be able to recruit student doctors and nurses here, so we'll need to train them up. Provides us with extra funds for each person we train and each research project we complete. First, we need a research license. They will grant us one if we can demonstrate our technical prowess by establishing a hospital with some upgraded machinery. Ooh, radiator was unlocked. That's promising. Some parts of the county are quite cold or too hot. We need to keep people comfortable by ensuring they're warm enough, but not too warm. If they're too cold or too hot, they can become unhappy and may leave. In cold locations, place radiators. In hot locations, we need AC. Use the temperature visualization mode to identify cold and hot areas. Make it comfortable to maximize thermal comfort. Okay, hospital at level 3, and upgrade a machine. You got it. So, I'm gonna crack into this, and I'll talk if there's something interesting that happens, but otherwise, oh, this place is kind of big. I will come back if I have any updates for you. Alright, voiceover here. It turns out that I was running under the weather when I was recording the previous segment, and so I've taken another couple of days to try and put my throat back together. We're still not 100% as I record this, and you might be able to hear a little bit of that nasal in my voice, but I should be in a much better spot than some of what you'll hear coming up. Turns out, not talking for quite a while during this sort of a time-lapse of the video is a really good way to ensure that my voice kind of pops and doesn't sound great. So it's going to be a little bit funky when past me comes back to talk with you guys about what's been going on. I figured that this would be a much better format for trying to run at least one of these episodes, was to see about setting up a time-lapse version, because I've done that in the past with things like Planet Coaster and other similar types of games, I think. I don't know that all of them have seen the light of day, but as this is an ongoing series, I'm sort of trying to push and see if I can make that happen here for y'all. And I felt that it would be a little bit better, maybe a little bit more curated viewing experience if I had something that was a little bit less of just me trying to figure out what to say and fill time, and more of me, you know, not having as much time to say stuff, not having to fill as much with just random chatter, because that always feels really weird to me, is, you know, being alone in a room and talking. This is the time of year when illness runs a little bit rampant, so it's, you know, kind of fitting that I'm playing a hospital-based game in order to kind of combat that and to set up a new series. And, yeah. So, since most of the hospital construction is largely the same, and I like to try and start off on the right foot, perhaps, I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little overzealous in saying that, I like to try and start by building out as much of the hospital as I can reasonably accomplish with the starting funds that I have. But, you know, eventually you run out of money, and also out of space, and then there's some awkward areas that get built as a result, and, well, you kind of have to make do with what you got. But being that I'm goal-oriented, the original task was to go ahead and try to get the research license as quickly as possible, which led to this.
Terrible things happen every day. You could lose a toe. Your house. Even your life. That's why you need insurance like Swindles Insurance. Swindles, because peace of mind is worth a piece of your soul. This is 2-Point Radio.
What did I just hear? We just got a research license. Okay, cool. Allow any of our hospitals to research new machines, upgrades, and more. To kick off a research project, we'll need a research room and a doctor with a research qualification. Diagnosis and treatment of patients can also contribute to research progress. Harvesting ghosts can also be very enlightening. Okay, so I'm being told that it's not a bad thing to kill some people every once in a while. Thanks, game. Okay, cool. Anyways, back at it. So that hospital announcement there, or I guess the advertisement on the radio, oddly poignant and relevant, especially if you're living here in the States as I am. Clearly the Brits know who their sense of humor needs to be targeted at. I can't even really say that this is a British-oriented game, although I do know that the original with Bullfrog, I think, was like predominantly intended for the UK. So it's kind of nice to see that they've got their old, you know, I don't know if you'd call it a stomping ground or if they're paying tithe or whatever. Now, I would have gone straight into building a research lab here as far as the construction of the hospital and the hiring of doctors goes, but I didn't have enough money to make that happen, as you can clearly see in the bottom right corner. And so I decided that I needed to kind of play the game and run some training and, you know, get my feet wet again with how Theme Hospital used to work, and then kind of adapt from there based on how this new game is supposed to new-ish game is supposed to operate. I ultimately ended up taking out a loan in order to try and buy a couple of facilities that I needed for whatever it was, an incoming emergency or something. And once I got that all covered and taken care of, then I believe I ended up spending more money on buying a new building so that I could afford to move some of the curing and diagnosing stations over, because this first building very quickly gets full of just everything. Every possible diagnosis and treatment facility that I could think of gets crammed in here, and obviously it's insufficient space. The whole point of the game is that you're expanding your hospital after all, so kind of makes sense that you need to make money and then spend money, and then you spend that money to make more money, and in order to spend money you gotta have money, so you gotta make money in order to have money to spend money to make money to have money to spend money. Or something. The game plays out kind of... This is my first time encountering people who have those, the beating heart that looks like it's bleeding out the bottom. I realized very quickly that means, oh, somebody's about to die. They're of low health. Because, you know, this is a strategy game, as much as it is sort of like a pseudo-simulator or a little tongue-in-cheek type game like that. And that means that if people are in your hospital for too long, then they run the risk of dying. Wow, what a novel concept, death in a hospital. It's supposed to be a place of healing and wellness, and yet there's a surprising amount of death. That kind of relates to the advertisement, actually. The idea that, you know, predatory life insurance policies or insurance policies of any kind would be taking advantage of people who maybe don't have any two ways about it or any real way of saying what's going on or what they desire and how much they're willing to pay for it. Hooray! This is like a weird meta-commentary on life. So I've moved a couple of things into the new building in the hospital, still working on construction. I realized partway through that I set up all of the GP offices, the desks are set up the wrong way so that the doctors are facing away from the patients when the patients come in the room. I thought that was really, really funny, but also was probably hurting some amount of efficiency with trying to get people in and out, so I decided to reverse the desks. And now I finally get the research lab going, which means that we can get in with our first research project. So take it away, past me. To start a research project, either click on the research pod or drop a researcher into the room. In the research screen, you can select a project from the available projects list. Once a project has been started, you'll need a doctor with a research qualification to carry out the work. It will contribute research to the project over time based on the research skill. Shared across a whole organization, as are the discoveries we make, you can start a project in one hospital and continue work on it in another hospital. Ooh! So maybe there's a strat to this where if I go to a previous hospital that I've already beat and is established, set up a research pod and then get some research doctors trained up and then thrown in here because I've got more money to spend instead of struggle busing it here. Maybe that's the way. Alright. We want chromotherapy. That's what this is telling me. So that's what we're going to begin. Now, the problem with calling in a doctor for research, as I very quickly discover, is that you can't just call any doctor over here. They need to be specifically trained in research, which is a little, whatever they call it, the additional or the accoutrement. It is what looks like a petri dish. I believe there are 5 levels of research specialist. I don't know that in this particular hospital I end up getting all the way up to 5. I think I may only get up to 1 or 2 just to get some research going and see what happens. But I do know that it takes an actual research doctor in order to get to chromotherapy, which is the key unlock for a 1-star hospital. Now, this does happen before too long. It doesn't take me much to get a doctor in there and to do some research. And then I realize that I can start reassigning priorities as well, so I take advantage of doing a little bit of that. But because my management is not quite up to snuff, because I'm still, you know, learning things about the game, I didn't quite have everything that it took to get the hospital up and running and fully managed. So, yeah, that's the update there. And now,
The Orb Foundation's health.
Ah, we've completed a research project. Nice. Kick off another project, make new discoveries. Okay.
Surgeon to see the only thing they're good at is brainwashing.
Fluid analysis for diagnosing. Injections. X-rays. Training research. Ooh, let's do this. Oh, I got a couple of pee spots here. Lovely. Let me build a bathroom. Turns out, they say that if you build it, they will come. Sometimes if you don't build it, then they will go. Yeah. I was still kind of figuring out all the research stuff, and obviously I'm not talking very much in between these time-lapsed clips. Or at least if I was, it's since been muted and removed. So now you're listening to, editor me giving you the voiceover. You can hear my voice is struggling a little bit in the standard speed clips whenever I cut back to what's actually going on active in the moment with all the background audio correct. But I figured that you probably don't need to hear all of that sped up and me coughing and hacking and sneezing and sniffling and all of that as I'm trying to work my way through what is otherwise a mild head cold. So instead, here we are listening to the relaxing dulcet tones of the actual OST. But now I think it's time for a 1-star unlock.
Afternoon in the sauna, but did not care for the smells as one walks
Oh,
down
look
the
at that.
corridor. In short,
Hospital's been
I would
awarded
stick
a
with the
1-star rating.
Perspiration Spa
Cool.
in Grockle Bay.
Deluxe Lux 3, Encyclopedia Bookcase 1. Ooh, interesting. Okay, we're gonna keep going, I think. So, I do eventually figure out where that bookcase, and another one, and the server unit, because those are the unlocks for these 3. I eventually figure out that they do, in fact, go inside the research facility. Now, I believe that the server units can be used in another facility, but I don't actively remember which one. It's been a minute to get my voice to reset and to sound at least somewhat normal. I don't actively remember which hospital infrastructure will allow for the server unit to be placed, but it does allow for speeding up of research projects, and I believe it also contributes to not just room decor, because everything contributes to decor, but to the curing or treatment rate of whatever facility it is. I decided partway in that the way that I had the hospital laid out didn't really make a ton of sense, and so I took it upon myself after the 1-star unlock to try and move as many staff facilities out of the main area of the hospital. And instead of being like scattered all over the place, I wanted to move them into one centralized hub. So I bought I guess it would be, if you're, face on at the building, it would effectively be like the southwest corner of the building. I decided to set that up predominantly as a staffing area, so that's why I'm now migrating classrooms over and buying new ones. I believe I eventually put all the research stuff in there, and then that's where I begin doing a lot of the research facility-oriented projects, because that's sort of the entire purpose of this hospital, is to teach you how to do training with doctors who know nothing, but also with like nurses and janitors and assistants who know nothing, in order to make them better at their jobs. As the doctors, nurses, assistants, and janitors do their jobs over time, they build up experience. This is tracked in-game via metrics that I don't bother to keep track of because it doesn't matter. And then every once in a while you get an annoying little letter that says, "Hey, I'm ready for an upgrade, can you..." But like, the way that I play is I try to be a little bit efficient about my classrooms here. So I only have, I think, 4, maybe 5 seats in each. I have the cauldron in there to increase the training speed and efficacy, or whatever it is. And I want to try and fill as many of those seats as possible, so that way the time that I'm spending pulling doctors and nurses and whatnot away from their respective jobs is effectively minimized insofar as that is possible. This is a little bit tedious because it means that then I have to wait for everybody to get to a level up point, and not everybody levels at the same rate just because, there's not an equal distribution of job opportunities throughout the entire hospital. But by doing it this way, I minimize the amount of time that people are collectively spent inside of a classroom by filling as many seats as possible. A little bit of the play slightly suboptimally in order to make a small benefit to myself for headache's sake or what have you. I do start moving all of the diagnosis structures over to, I guess it would be like the Middle East hallway over there, and I will eventually pick up, I think, the Middle West hallway to start moving all the curing infrastructure over, because I kept looking at all of the queuing times above the GP offices in the south entrance, and realize that this is ridiculous. People are spending way too long waiting in lines, and it's probably going to make my hospital rating go down. It also increases the risk that people will die in the hospital before they even get a chance to be cured. I bothered to take a look at how some of the training stuff goes, and some of the unlocks are for, I think it's like diagnosis and possibly for treatment. They have multiple levels to them, but I think I ultimately concluded that for doctors, it's useless to do diagnosis training when you can just GP them. So, anyways.
Nurse to injection room.
2-star. Very good. I don't know where the encyclopedia bookcase goes, but we're gonna find out. Cool, I can upgrade the easy scan. We're gonna keep pushing through until we hit 3-star hospital, because I want all my hospitals at 3-star. 20 staff, 4,000 research, 100 patients, and a cure rate of 60%. Cool. Then on we go. Now the requirements here are not super intimidating for the 3-star hospital. Research points generate kind of slowly, that is true, but it does depend on the level of research doctor that you have. And I believe, I don't remember if it's a linear or an exponential increase with each doctor that has, so like if you've got a doctor at level 1 versus if you train them to level 2 in research, I don't know if it's a linear increase that now they research at, say, 40% additional speed as opposed to 20, or if it's, 20 plus an additional multiplicative 20, so it would be effectively 44% or something like that. I don't know if it's linear or if it's logarithmic. What I do know is that you can schedule multiple research doctors into the facility, the same as you can schedule multiple nurses in the ward, which is super useful because it also increases the effective productivity of each of those individual doctors. Your numbers go up super fast. Just like in a ward, having an additional nurse, at least one, helps with assigning patients to beds and getting them into the changing room and all of that sort of thing. There is a benefit I've realized while playing this particular hospital to having a second ward that is just set aside for diagnosis, so you've got one for diagnosing and one for treatments, and you can make them different sizes depending on what you need. I think the diagnosis ward would probably require the bigger setup because you've got more opportunity for a variety of patients to come through and to potentially have a whole host of different illnesses, but treatments, those have to be ward specific, and there's no sense taking up treatment specific beds because you've got patients waiting on a diagnosis. Especially not because now with the research lab, you can unlock some of the better high-zoot research techs, which include what's basically this game's version of an MRI, a mega machine, I think is what it's called. Now, I've not dabbled in radiology yet in the game. I haven't built a mega facility, I haven't trained anybody in radiology, but I'm sure that I'll get to it at some point. Just as of this particular episode being recorded, I had not gotten to it. I do believe that I eventually build another research facility. I moved the old one over in order to put in an injection center, and now you can see me moving all of the curing facilities for some of our bigger engineering challenges, the ones that actually require designated buildings and that have machines that can be destroyed in earthquakes and stuff, which is a future thing that happens in the game, by the way. All of them get moved over into their own separate hallway. And this, for me, was just for, like, organization, but it is... I'm not sure if it's inefficient or if it's just a little bit suboptimal to play this way, because in my head, if I have all of the cure facilities over in one spot and I have all the diagnosis facilities in another, then I kind of have a linear or a circular flow pattern across the hospital for guests, the patients moving around. The downside to this is, as I found out in Theme Hospital, if you have a diagnosis facility like a GP's office in one location, and then you have a cardio nearby, and then you have a pharmacy nearby, and you, if you have all your GPs that are like centered in one location, that means that your patient has to go to a GP's office, then go across the hospital for another diagnosis location, then go back across the hospital for the GP in order to be reassigned to a different diagnosis path. It is a little bit inefficient to do it that way because by not mixing your buildings, your individual rooms into the larger structure of the hospital, you lose out on those opportunities to streamline the guest experience. Not that I really care about the patient's experience, I guess, so much as making money, because that's a sign of predatory healthcare practice, right? I think more where this is prevalent is if I wanted to get patients out of the hospital faster to clear up room, which is an actual concern that I have, then I should probably work on not grouping all of the same things together. Anyways, I think it's about time for a 3-star unlock. Oh, look at that. 3 stars. Didn't feel like I deserved any of that, but okay. Still trying to figure out where the bookshelves in the server unit go. Maybe they're supposed to be in the research department? I don't know. I think this'll probably do us for here. But I'm gonna go ahead and, I guess, continue just a little bit off camera and do a little bit more work. See what else I can get out of this. Maybe I can reorganize the hospital and make it better, because right now it's kind of a disaster. Yeah. Hopefully the time-lapsing thing played out a little bit better, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!